Chapter 1, Nutrition and You. Please read through the next few slides for your chapter objectives. Each chapter will contain chapter objectives at the beginning of the presentation. As we get started on our journey into the world of health and nutrition, our first focus will be to demonstrate that nutritional science is an evolving field of study, continually being updated and supported by research, studies, and trials. Although food and nutrition have been studied for centuries, modern nutritional science is surprisingly young. The first vitamin was isolated and chemically defined in 1926, less than 100 years ago, ushering in a half-century of discovery focused on single nutrient deficiency diseases. A primary goal of this text is to provide you with information backed by nutritional science and with a variety of resources that use scientific evidence to optimize health and to prevent disease. In this chapter, you'll see that there are many conditions and deadly diseases that can be prevented by good nutrition. Nutrition is the sum of all processes involved in how organisms obtain nutrients, metabolize them, and use them to support all of life's processes. Nutritional science is the investigation of how an organism is nourished and incorporates the study of how nourishment affects personal health, population health, and planetary health. The word nutrition means to nourish. Without adequate nutrition, the human body doesn't function optimally, and severe nutritional inadequacy can lead to disease and even death. In 1946, the World Health Organization, or WHO, defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. A triangle is often used to depict the equal influences of physical, mental, and social well-being on health. Disease is defined as any abnormal condition affecting the health of an organism, and it's characterized by specific signs and symptoms. Diseases are broadly categorized as resulting from pathogens. Pathogens are bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites, deficiencies, genetics, and physiological dysfunction. The most effective and affordable method of preventing chronic disease starts with optimal nutrition. In 1894, the first congressional funds were appropriated to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA, for the study of the relationship between nutrition and human health. It took until 1980 for the USDA and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to jointly release the first edition of Nutrition and Your Health, Dietary Guidelines for Americans. In the latter part of the 20th century, nutritional scientists, public health organizations, and the American public increasingly recognize that eating too much of certain foods is linked to chronic diseases. We now know that diet-related conditions and diseases include hypertension or high blood pressure, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, and osteoporosis. According to the USDA, eating healthier could save Americans over $70 billion per year, and this does not include the cost of obesity, which is estimated to cost a further $117 billion per year. In 2011, the U.S. federal government released a new multimedia tool that aims to help Americans choose healthier foods from the 5 food groups: grains, vegetables, fruits, dairy, and proteins. Nutrients are substances required by the body to perform its basic functions. Nutrients must be obtained from the diet, since the human body does not synthesize them. Nutrients are used to produce energy, detect and respond to environmental surroundings, move, excrete waste, respire or breathe, grow, and reproduce. There are 6 classes of nutrients required for the body to function and maintain overall health. These are protein, carbohydrates, water, fat, and vitamins and minerals. Nutrients that are needed in large amounts are called macronutrients. There are 3 classes of macronutrients: carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So when you think of macronutrients, think food. These can be metabolically processed into cellular energy. Water is also a macronutrient in the sense that you require a large amount of it, but unlike the other macronutrients, it does not give you energy. A unit of measure of food energy is the calorie. On nutrition food labels, the amount given for calories is actually equivalent to each calorie multiplied by 1,000, or a kilocalorie. A kilocalorie is synonymous with calorie on nutrition food labels. Carbohydrates are molecules composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. The major food sources of carbohydrates are grains, milk, fruits, and starchy vegetables like potatoes. Carbohydrates are broadly classified into two forms based on their chemical structure: fast-releasing carbohydrates, often called simple sugars, and slow-releasing carbohydrates. Carbohydrates produce 4 kilocalories of energy per gram. Lipids are also a family of molecules composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but unlike carbohydrates, they are insoluble in water. Lipids are found predominantly in butter, oils, meats, dairy products, nuts, seeds, and in many processed foods. The three main types of lipids are triglycerides, phospholipids, and sterols. In addition to energy storage, lipids serve as cell membranes, surround and protect organs, aid in temperature regulation, and regulate many other functions in the body. Lipids provide 9 kilocalories of energy per gram. Molecules composed of chains of amino acid subunits are called proteins. Amino acids, in turn, are simple subunits composed of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. The food sources of proteins are meats, dairy products, seafood, and a variety of different plant-based foods, most notably soy. Proteins provide structure to bones, muscles, and skin, and play a role in conducting most of the chemical reactions that take place in the body. Protein provides 4 kilocalories of energy per gram. Water doesn't contain carbon, but it's composed of 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen per molecule of water. More than 60% of your total body weight is water. Rule of 3. You can survive 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Unlike other macronutrients, water does not yield calories. Micronutrients are nutrients required by the body in lesser amounts, but are still essential for carrying out bodily functions. In contrast to macronutrients, the micronutrients are not directly used for making energy, but they assist in the process as being part of enzymes. Micronutrients include 16 essential minerals and 13 vitamins. Minerals are solid inorganic substances that form crystals and are classified depending on how much of them we need. Trace minerals are only required in a few milligrams or less. Macrominerals are required in hundreds of milligrams. Many minerals are critical for enzyme function. Others are used to maintain fluid balance, build bone tissue, synthesize hormones, transmit nerve impulses, contract and relax muscles, and protect against harmful free radicals. Unlike minerals, vitamins are all organic compounds. The 13 vitamins are categorized as either water-soluble or fat-soluble. The water-soluble vitamins are vitamin C and all the B vitamins. The fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. Vitamins are required to perform many functions in the body, such as making red blood cells, synthesizing bone tissue, and playing a role in normal vision, nervous system function, and immune system function. One measurement of food quality is the amount of nutrients it contains relative to the amount of energy it provides. High-quality foods are nutrient-dense, meaning they contain many of the nutrients relative to the amount of calories they provide. An empty-calorie food, such as carbonated sugary soft drinks, provide many calories but very little, if any, other nutrients. The organized process of inquiry that's used in nutritional science is called the scientific method. Once observations are made, they come up with a hypothesis, test their hypothesis, and then interpret the results. Although a lengthy process, the scientific method is a productive way to define essential nutrients and to determine their ability to promote health and prevent disease. There are three types of scientific studies. Epidemiological studies are observational studies, and they're the frontline studies for public health. Interventional clinical trial studies are scientific investigations in which a variable is changed between groups of people. Randomized clinical interventional trial studies are investigations in which participants are assigned by chance to separate groups that compare different treatments. One of the most famous epidemiological studies done in nutrition science was the 1948 Framingham, Massachusetts heart study. 5,200 people between the ages of 30 and 62 participated. The aim was to identify risk factors for heart disease. They remeasured every 2 years, and over 1,000 published articles came from this study. An important interventional clinical trial study was the DASH study. There were 459 participants. It was an 8-week study, and the results showed that the group on the combination diet had significantly lower blood pressure. What came out of that study is the DASH diet. Science is always evolving and moving forward, although sometimes slowly. One study isn't enough to make a guideline or a recommendation or to cure a disease. Science is a stepwise process that builds on past evidence and finally culminates into a well-accepted conclusion. Science can also be contentious. Although a somewhat slow process, it's better for our health to allow the evidence to accumulate before incorporating some change in our diet. In addition to nutrition, health is affected by genetics, the environment, life cycle, and lifestyle. These factors are referred to as determinants of health, and they all interact with each other. Genes are responsible for your many traits as an individual, and they're defined as the sequences of DNA that code for all the proteins in your body. The sequence of DNA that makes up your genes determines your genetic makeup, also called your genome, which is inherited from your mother and father. In 2003, the Human Genome Project was completed, and now the entire sequence of DNA in humans is known. Nutrigenomics is an emerging scientific discipline aimed at defining healthy genes and not so healthy genes and how nutrients affect them. Scientists can't change a person's DNA sequence. However, they've discovered that chemical reactions in the body can turn genes on and off, causing changes in the amounts and types of proteins expressed. Epigenetics is another rapidly advancing scientific field in which researchers study how chemical reactions turn gene expression on and off and the factors that influence the chemical reactions. Some of these factors are now known to be nutrients. The life cycle of human beings originates from a fertilized egg, which develops into a fetus that's eventually born as a baby. A baby develops into a child, transitions through the wonderful phase of adolescence, becomes an adult, and then advances into old age and eventually death. The USDA provides information on healthy diets for many different stages of the life cycle on their website. Your environment has a large influence on your health, genetics, life cycle, and lifestyle. Scientists say that the majority of your expressed traits are a product of your genes and the environment, of which nutrition is a component. An example of this interaction can be observed in people who have the rare genetic disorder phenylketonuria, or PKU. Socioeconomic status is a measurement made up of three variables: income, occupation, and education. These affect nutrition by influencing what foods you can afford and consequently food choice and food quality. The burden of disease is highest in the most disadvantaged populations. The Journal of the American Medical Association reports that the lower life expectancy of populations of lower socioeconomic status is largely attributable to increased death from heart disease. Other dimensions that affect health disparity are race, ethnic group, sex, sexual identity, age, disability, and geographic location. The federal government recognizes the issue of inequitable health among Americans, and one of the overarching goals of Healthy People 2030 is to promote, strengthen, and evaluate the nation's efforts to improve the health and well-being of all people. One facet of lifestyle is your dietary habits. Dietary habits include what a person eats, how much they eat during a meal, how frequently meals are consumed, and how often a person eats out at restaurants. Other aspects of lifestyle include physical activity, recreational drug use, and sleeping patterns. Being physically active is one of the most important steps that Americans of all ages can take to improve their health. The 2018 Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans provide science-based, data-driven guidance to help Americans age 6 and older to improve their health through appropriate physical activity. Recreational drug use, which includes tobacco smoking and alcohol consumption, along with narcotic and other illegal drug use, has a large impact on health. The health effects of drug abuse can be far-reaching, including increased risk for stroke, heart disease, cancer, lung disease, and liver disease. From visiting websites about traditional foods of different cultures and ethnic groups, you may have noticed that a few more things besides environment and lifestyle influence the foods you choose to eat. Some of these include taste, texture, and appearance, economics, early food experiences, habits, culture, geography, advertising, social factors, health concerns, emotions, green foods, and sustainable foods. The mainstream media inundates the American population with health cures and tips, making it very confusing to develop the best plan for your health. One of the easiest places to begin a personal health assessment is by examining the results from your last physical. Remember that the results belong to you, and having this information on hand provides you with much of what you need to keep track of your health. The science of nutrition includes the study of how organisms obtain food from their environment. Human nutrition and the health of the world's ecosystem are independent, meaning that what we eat and where we get it from affects the world. Sustainable food system is defined as one that provides healthy food to meet current food needs while maintaining healthy ecosystems that can also provide food for generations to come with minimal negative impact to the environment. Sustainable food systems are available, accessible, affordable to all, humane, and just. The most prominent challenge to building a sustainable food system is to make food available and accessible to all. Food security is defined by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations as existing when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. The typical American diet does not adhere to dietary guidelines and recommendations. It's unhealthy and thus costs this country billions of dollars in health care. The average American diet contains too many processed foods with added sugars and saturated fats and not enough fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Moreover, the average American takes in more kilocalories each day than ever before. This shift of the population toward unhealthy, high-calorie diets has fueled the obesity and diet-related disease crisis in this nation. There has been an increase in food deserts. A food desert is a location that doesn't provide access to affordable, high-quality, nutritious food. People who live in food deserts often have some of the highest incidences of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. Some challenges of developing sustainability include agribusiness lobby, genetically engineered plants, the use of herbicides and pesticides, crop-specific subsidies, and EU research funding imbalances.